Was Fortnite Chapter 5 good? Yeah, I think so, probably. Chapter 5 is probably one of the most hated chapters in Fortnite history, even having several of Fortnite's biggest content creators actively say it's the worst Fortnite has ever been. But was it? Now don't get the wrong idea, Chapter 5 is not the best Fortnite chapter, not by a long shot, but I feel like the content that Chapter 5 had to offer gets more hate than it deserves. If we actually take a step back and see everything this chapter had to offer, I feel like the positives would start to outweigh the negatives, or at least I think so. Let's see. Let's look back and go through everything Fortnite Chapter 5 had to offer and see if it deserves the title of Worst Fortnite Chapter. Now before we get too far into this, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. This video is coming from my experience playing this chapter. Everything you're about to hear is from the perspective of a casual, zero-build keyboard and mouse player. I don't play the game at a high level. In fact, I'm not very good at the game at all. So I'm not going to be talking about the best loadouts or if a landing location is optimal. Instead, I'm going to be looking at how much I enjoyed different aspects of Battle Royale. Were the weapons fun? Were the landing spots cool? Which Battle Pass skin do I want on my fantasy football team? That type of stuff. There are so many people who talk about Fortnite on a competitive level, and that's not the goal of this video. I want to analyze this game on a casual level to see how much fun it was. I know that viewing Fortnite on a competitive level is an important aspect of the game, but most Fortnite players are casuals, so looking at the game through this lens still has its merits, even if most pro players are going to disagree with me. Speaking of disagreeing, everything I talk about here is going to come from my subjective opinion, which will be different from yours in places. I'm going to say good things about Wrecked, and you're probably going to disagree with them. And that's okay. Just because I'm taking the time to express my thoughts, it does not make my opinion special. Everyone has thoughts and feelings about this game, and this video is just what I enjoyed, which will be different from what you enjoyed. Like I said, this video is from the perspective of a casual zero-build keyboard and mouse player, which will be different from a competitive build mode controller player. Both of these are valid ways of playing the game, and no one is better than the other. It just comes down to personal preference. So if you disagreed with me, feel free to let me know your thoughts. This video's got a comment section for a reason. Lastly, every so often I'll have text show up on screen to either elaborate on what I said or make a small correction. They're just extra thoughts I had while editing. You can pause to read them if you want, or don't if you don't care. Are we good? We're all on the same page? Alright. Let's get started. Fortnite Chapter 5 started out the same way our universe did, because it all started with a Big Bang. The Big Bang event was a showcase of 3 new game modes coming to Fortnite, and I did not get to see it because I was stuck in queue. Epic. Thankfully, the event really wasn't that interesting, and watching it on YouTube is basically the same experience of being there in-game. Honestly, I've never been a big fan of live events in general. Don't get me wrong, they're cool to look at, and I do try to make time for these, but they don't normally have that much substance. I always saw them as cool special advertisements and nothing more, but I digress. So how exactly does the Big Bang event connect Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 together? The answer is very simple. It doesn't. We go from creating a multiverse to having Eminem yell at us to floating in space, and then after downtime, we're suddenly on a new map. I still have so many questions. Is there even still a 0 point, or is the whole metaverse a 0 point? Is the Imagine Order still a thing? How does any of this tie into the story? These are all questions that I'm still waiting on answers for. But whatever, we're here now. Welcome to Chapter 5. Somebody took our bananas. Stop asking questions and go get them back. Let's start by talking about the map. While Fortnite is known for its cartoony aesthetic, this map looks like they're going for a more realistic look. The general color palette of this map just feels more muted and earthy, from the light grassy meadows to the left to the snow-covered mountains and forests to the right. It looks really nice, but it just feels kind of bland. Each area of the Chapter 4 map had such distinct and vibrant colors, and while the Chapter 5 map will eventually get some color, at the start it just feels less lively. Then again, muted colors aren't a bad thing. I mean, Elden Ring is mostly muted colors. Are you gonna say that game looks bad? In fact, the general style of the map looks like it could be something you'd see in real life. That's mainly because the buildings on the map were inspired by European architecture. In fact, the train station announcer speaks different European languages depending on which part of the map you're on. Speaking of which, there's a train that goes around the map, and just like the train in GTA, it's pointless. I mean, you can get some items from the train, but they're not that good. It's an interesting addition, but ultimately it's just a moving low-tier landing spot. And when it comes to the named locations on the map, I feel like there's just a lack of variety. Several of the POIs just feel very samey. Take, for example, Rebel's Roost. It's a small multi-story building at the very top left of the map, which is meant to be a hideout for Hope and Jonesy. I'll talk more about them soon, but because of the heist theme this season is going for, this place is covered in spray paint and has a few secret rooms with loot inside them. This would be a fairly distinct landing spot if it wasn't for the giant mansion almost next to this one. Lavish Lair just feels like a bigger version of Rebel's Roost, just without the spray paint and no secret rooms. Instead of a small mansion, this one's just a normal sized mansion. The only other difference between the two is that Rebels is in a forest while Lavish is in a more open area that is directly next to Rebels. Not to mention the fact that there's another mansion on the map that's even bigger. Grand Glacier does make itself differ on the inside because it's not actually a mansion, it's just a fancy hotel. There's a bunch of small rooms on the outside with a big open area in the middle, but still it has the same general snowy mansion vibes that the other two locations have. My biggest issue with the Chapter 5 map is the general lack of variety in named locations. Now, there are some unique locations. Classy Courtyards is a fairly open area with tennis courts around it, and Ruined Reels is surrounded by these broken marble rooms. But other than that, a lot of the POIs just feel very similar. Fencing Fields just feels like Pleasant Plaza with a wine orchard around it, and Snooty Snips just feels like Ritzy Riviera. In fact, the only difference between these two locations is that this one has, oh my god, that's Peter Griffin. Let's talk about the bosses on the map, which conveniently lets us also talk about the Battle Pass. There are 5 bosses across the map, which does help make each named location feel more distinct. While locations like Fencing Fields and Pleasant Plaza do feel similar, Fencing has a boss walking around, while Pleasant is a more traditional landing spot. Although the boss fights are fairly similar, when the boss loses their shields, they do a little emote for a little bit, and then they summon a handful of guards and regain their shields. While these bosses are all the same, the location each boss spawns at does make them a little bit more interesting. Nisha normally spawns in the open, making it very easy for other players to attack you while you're fighting her, while Oscar spawns in this little greenhouse closed off from the rest of the location. I do really like how most of the Battle Pass skins are bosses on the map. It adds a level of interest to every skin. While skins like Montague and Valeria didn't really resonate with me at first, having them be on the map and be the main focus of a POI, I did slowly get attached to all of them. It's probably why I like this Battle Pass so much. I was able to interact with them and then get familiar with each one of them. I know most people only got this pass for Peter Griffin, and that's fine, but I did enjoy interacting with all the other characters. Now, with so many characters, you may be wondering how they were used to tell the season's story, and the answer was, they weren't. The story for this season was almost non-existent. Peely was captured by the Society, which is the group name of all the bosses on the map, and Hope and Jonesy have to go rescue him. And that's it. That's all the story we got for over 100 days. There weren't even any story quests besides a few towards the end of the season. The story is absolutely the worst part of this season because there really wasn't one. There are tiny hints to something bigger going on, but I'll talk about those later. For now, this paragraph is all I have to say about the story. Now, if the story doesn't make these characters more interesting, then what does? And the answer is the reward for beating the boss. Medallions. All of the bosses on the map drop these shiny coins whenever they're defeated. All of these coins do the same thing, slowly replenishing your shields while also giving away your location on the map. The more medallions you have, the more shields you regain while also regaining them faster. This makes the coins heavily sought after items while also not being too powerful. So you can still land at a location that doesn't have medallions and still have a fighting chance. And because players with medallions are shown on the map, you can get the advantage in the fight by sneaking up on them. There is one small issue with these, and that is medallions just fully give away your location. They put this big circle on the map to try to make it less obvious where you're at, trying to suggest that you could be anywhere within this circle, but Jackson found out the medallion holder is always in the middle of the circle, so you can just tell exactly where the medallion player is. But if that's the cost for infinitely regenerating shields, that's not a bad trade-off. These things are definitely an interesting addition, giving players a boost while also making them more vulnerable. They're neat. Alright, enough chit-chat, let's get into the meat and potatoes and talk about the items in rotation. First, let's talk about weapon attachments, because there's really not much to say about them. Every gun you pick up has a random assortment of attachments to make the gun slightly different. These range from game-changing differences to I can't tell a difference. Being able to change the scope on your gun is the most notable difference. You can pick up an AR with a sniper scope or a sniper with a scope that makes it impossible to see. There are also 2 magazines to choose from, which I think is the most interesting part of the attachment system. And then there's the rest of the attachments that do something, I think. Underbarrel attachments just feel like a min-max option that are only helpful in specific circumstances, and then barrel attachments do so little I forget that they're even an option. Barrel and underbarrel attachments just don't feel like they do that much, and if you get an optics attachment that you don't like, it actively makes the gun worse. I like the idea of weapon attachments, but this execution needs more work. It is the start of the chapter, so this idea will be elaborated on in future seasons. Right? I should also say that you can change your attachments at these workbenches. God, I say the word attachments a lot in the script. However, there are only 6 of these on the map. 5 of them are locked behind beating a boss on the map, and the other one spawns on Loot Island like 10 minutes into a match. Getting to these benches is so hard that you're better off just trying to find a gun with the attachments that you want already on it. Anyways, let's talk about the guns themselves, because at the end of the day, you can add as many attachments to the Enforcer AR as you want. It does not change the fact that it's the worst gun in rotation. Much like the map, all the weapons felt more grounded to go with the theme the season has. A good example of this is the Striker AR. It looks like the classic Scar from a distance, but if you look closer, you can see it has more muted colors and a sense of realism to fit in with everything else. Every weapon this season has the same feel to it, like the Nemesis AR just looks like a normal AK. The Striker AR feels like the best option out of all 3. It has such a high fire rate that it feels like an SMG but with an AR's damage output, which is good because I'm not a fan of any of the SMG options. There's the Hyper SMG, which isn't that bad, I slowly learned to like this thing, and then there's the Thunderburst SMG, which is one of the least enjoyable weapons in rotation. While the Striker feels like an SMG, the Burst just feels like an AR that shoots BBs and not actual bullets. Now don't get me wrong, in the right hands this thing can be deadly, but in my hands it feels like I'm better off just swinging my pickaxe. Not to mention that this thing feels like the least satisfying weapon in rotation. The sound design on this thing is just... ugh. Come on, give me a gun that has power and sounds good. Oh boy, let's talk about the Reaper Sniper, the bread and butter of this season. This is one of the most enjoyable weapons to come out of this chapter. Any season with a sniper in it is a good season, but what's special about the Reaper Sniper is that it actually pairs well with the attachment system. When you aim down sights with a sniper scope, it leaves behind a glint that gives away your location, but you can also put on another attachment that takes the glint away. Or you can just take off the scope entirely if you hate fun. Speaking of snipers, this is probably the best time to talk about bullet drop. This season, all weapons in rotation were changed from hit scan to bullet drop. If you don't know what that means, it's basically a system that gives bullets gravity, so shooting at a distance requires more aim. I'm only mentioning this now because you really feel it with the sniper. Now that snipers have bullet drop, hitting a long distance shot is so much harder. Still possible, but way harder. I know some people are gonna make the argument that, snipers have always had bullet drop. Yeah, sure, they dropped like 3 inches every 7 miles compared to the flaccid line that it is now. Don't get me wrong, you can still hit shots from a distance, it just takes more thought than it used to. I've also seen people say that this is the most overpowered sniper Fortnite has ever had, and I think those people just don't remember what it's like having a sniper in rotation. They are always one of the strongest weapons in rotation. I just think that more people are using them because assault rifles just aren't as good as a distance anymore. The sniper is absolutely one of the strongest items in rotation. The only other gun I can think of that is equally as strong is the Frenzy Auto Shotgun was the most powerful weapon in rotation, only because you could just melt people with it. It did so much damage so quickly that it dominated close range fights. Then again, it was also the only shotgun in rotation. I mean, there was the Hammer Pump Shotgun, but that's clearly a gun meant for build mode. Why would you pick up a gun that requires aim when you can pick up a baby mode gun that gives easy kills for you? Thankfully, there's an item in rotation that hard counters the Frenzy, and it's one of my favorite items from Season 1, the Ballistic Shield. Yes, my favorite item this season was the Baby Shield. Go ahead, you're allowed to make fun of me. The shield basically allows you to rush in front of players with almost no consequence. The pistol it comes with does almost nothing in terms of damage, but chip damage is better than no damage. Now, you're not completely protected while holding the shield. A little bit of your head and feet poke out when you're using it, and obviously, it only protects you from the front. But having an item that lets you just stand in front of an enemy and take hits is really enjoyable for how recklessly I play at times. I also love how you can just shield bash people with it. A lot of players use this as a defensive item to hide behind, but it's also a fantastic item to push with. An equally enjoyable item is Cluster Clingers, which is just a normal clinger with 4 grenades attached to it. I do love how in the loot pool full of serious weapons, they also put in an item that is just a bomb with more bombs attached to it. It shows that Fortnite is still willing to be a little bit goofy. Lastly, before we talk about collab items, we have the Grapple Blade, the main mobility of the season. It's a fairly slow item considering shockwaves are still in rotation, but it isn't an awful item. Because you have to grapple onto an object to use it, the Grapple Blade's usefulness really depends on what part of the map you're at. If you're in an open area like Lavish or Fencing, it's not the most helpful, but if you're in a town with a lot of buildings or the forest by Rebel's Roost, oh, this thing can take you places. It's an interesting item, but I still would prefer something like the Kinetic Katana. That being said, it would be a little overkill to have a grapple blade and 4 weapons that could be used for mobility. Why are the Ninja Turtles here? Major collabs and event items. Let's tackle these from most interesting to least. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came to the island for 2 weeks to help rescue Peely, I think. With it came 4 different melee items, each one basically being a reskin with the Kinetic Katana, but with different attacking speeds and different animations. It was really fun going from all this serious realism and slow mobility to dashing all over the place with a full pizza in my back pocket. Now in this collab, you needed to be careful, because whenever you see the turtles, you also have to watch out for Shredder, who is in the event pass. I do like how this pass was organized, having all the turtle stuff be free, but all the Shredder items were in the premium rewards. It shows that there was a lot of time and effort put into this. The Turtles collab was actually really fun. I can't say the same for Metal Gear though. Don't get me wrong, Snake and Raiden look amazing. However, the items we got with this collab were a choice. It feels like Fortnite never does stealth items right. The stealth camo doesn't give you full invisibility, so it basically gives you the same level of camouflage as a fully black superhero skin. And there's a cooldown between getting out of camo and shooting that plays a really loud noise, so sneaking up on somebody with this just isn't viable. The EMP this thing gives off is somehow the most useful feature because you can at least use that to get some gold from vending machines. The cardboard boxes are equally as useless, but at least those are funny and a cool reference. But if Fortnite wants a good stealth item, it needs to give better invisibility. And that's really it for events and collabs. I would mention Winterfest, but it didn't really happen. There was no Crackshot's cabin, and the only items we got in rotation were the snowball launcher and another stupid stealth item. That being said, the Ship It Express game mode was amazing. In Only Throwables game mode was incredibly fun and chaotic. This was by far the best part of Winterfest, and I hope they bring this back every year just like they do with Horde Rush. But other than this one exception, Winterfest kind of blew this year. Okay, before we start talking about the Season 2 build-up event, there's a handful of random things I wanted to talk about. Just some stray thoughts before moving on to the next season. At the very start of the season, they added in these new realistic movement animations, and these also came with the downside of having much slower movement speed. It was the most noticeable while you were crouching, because while walking and running was a little slower, crouch walking was so much slower than it was before. It took a couple of matches to get used to it, but honestly it wasn't that bad. However, other people hated this. While me and my friends adjusted to this fairly quickly, it was apparently much harder for other people to get the hang of it. In fact, there were times where you could just win a match because the other team just couldn't get out of Storm. There was so much backlash that Fortnite had to update the movement system to keep these new animations, but also make it just about as fast as the old movement speed. Like I said, I didn't really mind these changes, so it's weird seeing people lose their minds over what I saw as a minor change. I really hope this is the most controversial thing that happens this chapter and people don't lose their minds over anything like this again. Anyways, the locker looks different now, and it's way more complicated than it needs to be. Instead of having one preset for everything, you now have a preset for your outfits, a different preset for your emotes, another preset for your raps, another set just for your lobby icon, and one for your instruments, and why is this so complicated? There's no reason to split up the locker like this. Before, everything was just in one menu, and now you split it up into like 7 different menus, each one having their own sub-menus. Why? I know that not every cosmetic item is compatible with every game mode, but overcomplicating the locker like this is not the way to fix it. Now, if you were paying attention to the little details that don't matter, you might have seen some of the few story elements from this season. Valeria was searching for Pandora's box. What any of this had to do with kidnapping Peely, we'll never know, but eventually Pandora's box was brought onto the map in a mini live event that I didn't get to see because I was at work when it happened. I missed both the box appearing and it opening because I have a life outside of this game. Do you see why I don't like live events? But now, with Pandora's box open, it caught the attention of the Greek gods, bringing them to the island, and bringing us into... Oh, wait, by the way, we rescued Peely. That's a thing that happened. He's fine now, don't worry. Anyways, this brings us into Chapter 5, Season 2, Myths and Mortals. Also, this season was called Underground. I never mentioned that part. Every Fortnite season has a name. I don't know why people don't use them more often, and I'm just really bad at transitions. Oh my god. Myths and Mortals, a full season based off of Greek mythology, and a battle pass filled with Greek gods. This leads me into my biggest question about this season. The Greek gods are some of the most well-known characters in media, having hundreds of interpretations of them. There are so many different ways to portray these legendary figures. It has me wondering, how exactly did Fortnite design these characters to look so boring? Like, it's not just me, right? This battle pass has some of the most generic looking designs the Greek gods have ever had. Aphrodite just looks like a generic supermodel, Medusa's design wouldn't be that memorable if it wasn't for her reactive eyes, and Hades just feels a little I have mixed opinions on this one. He looks better than the God of War design, but worse than the Supergiant design, if that makes any sense. The worst offender has got to be Zeus. He just looks so generic looking, like he's just some random buff guy with lightning powers. Look, don't get me wrong, these are not bad skins by any means, but these are skins based off of Greek gods, legendary figures with the power to move the stars, powers to shape the earth, and powers to turn people they don't like into lions because they got a little too touchy-feely in your place of worship. Does Zeus not know how lions work? And the reason I'm so hung up about this is because there is a skin in the battle pass that is executed perfectly. Artemis. This is a skin that feels godlike. Artemis is known for being a goddess of the hunt, so she has a general bow and arrow aesthetic, but she's also known for being a lunar deity. So she has this starry night pattern in her design that moves around like the clothes from Chowder. This is how you make a skin based off of a god. It's just weird to me how they would do such a good job with one skin and then just not give the other skins the same treatment. Then again, I might be being a little too harsh. Like I said, these aren't bad skins, just a little generic. If they just had a little bit more time in the oven, I'm sure these skins would have been equally as good as Artemis. And there are other skins of the past that still look good. Cerberus has a good design, and Poseidon has a Slurp series is a fun interpretation. It might just be me, but I feel like the skins of the past just aren't legendary enough to be considered godlike. I'm sorry, my Greek mythology nerd is showing. There's gonna be a lot of that this season. Alright, enough of the skin talk, let's talk about the changes from Season 1 to Season 2. First off, there are 2 new areas on the map, and each one having 2 POIs. 2 plus 2 is 4, so that's 4 areas in total. I'm very good at math. We have a more heavenly area in the bottom right with this yellowy grass and white marble statues all over the place. And then we have a more hellish area in the top left with dark, jaggedy terrain. They're still using the muted colors that they had last season, which makes the vibrant colors of the water in the underworld look out of this world. Going into the water will give you these skulls on your back that you can use to dash forward, which is really useful. The only issue is that I don't really know what to call these. They weren't really given a name. Are they skull dashes, death dashes, are they sticks dashes? I don't know. My friends and I just called it the dog sauce, so that's what I'm gonna call it from now on. The dog sauce really makes the underworld parts of the map more memorable. Grimgate has a section of the river going through the middle of the location, and the castle in the underworld has dog sauce flowing through the top in these little sewer tunnels and giant puddles of the stuff at the bottom. The whole underworld section is one of the more unique parts of the map, and while the other side of the map doesn't give you any special abilities, it's still an interesting place. The statue at Mount Olympus is the tallest landmark on the map, and it's fairly close to Brawler's Battleground, which is close to the lowest part on the map. The 2 POIs are fairly samey, but just like last season, the monotony is broken up by bosses. Mount Olympus has a fight with Zeus in a closed-off area, while Brawler's Battlegrounds has a more open fight with Ares. The same goes for the 2 fights in the underworld. Hades is closed off while Cerberus is out in the open. What's really cool is that each boss is mechanically different from one another, giving the fights more personality. Hades steals your health and gives it to his minions. Cerberus summons wolves instead of soldiers. Zeus has a massive fight where you have to down him once, and then he summons a wave of minions. And then after those minions are gone, he comes back with full health and more power. And then there's the fight with Ares that's a complete joke, and you just kill him in a few seconds. God of War made this look a lot harder. Even though there are less bosses than last season, these fights are way more interesting, which just like last season, helps people get attached to the Battle Pass characters. Not to mention that 2 of the other Battle Pass characters are specialist NPCs you can hire. Aphrodite is the splash medic that will throw heals out from time to time, and Best Girl Artemis can scan enemies showing their location. This puts 6 of the 7 Battle Pass characters not only on the map, but also gives you an incentive to interact with them. I mean, Medusa is on the map, but she kinda just stands there and tells you how important she is. Cringe. Now, you may have noticed that most of these changes are on the 2 far sides of the map. You may be wondering what happened to the other locations. Well, they got worse. Remember how Season 1 had bosses to help make similar locations feel different? Well, all of the Season 1 bosses are gone, meaning that there is now nothing to make similar locations feel any different. Fencing Fields and Pleasant Plaza are almost identical now. Rebel's Roost, Lavish Lair, and Grand Glacier are still here with almost nothing to make them distinguished from one another. Now that the Season 1 bosses are gone, the map just feels empty. Other than ruined reels becoming restored reels, the rest of the map just feels barren this season with nothing really happening. Well, there is one interesting change. Those are these bunkers on the map. There are 9 of these, and when they open, they are filled with loot, gold, and a mod bench in them, meaning that you don't need to fight a boss in order to have access to mod benches. Now you just need to survive long enough in a match until these bunkers open. And why does this one have chains on them? So even though there are 9 bunkers on the map, only 6 of them open, and most of the time 2 or 3 of these open while in storm. There are several times where every bunker opens so far away from you that you're better off just not even going for them. And because these are the only way to access a mod bench other than Loot Island, it's just another thing that gets in the way of you using the attachment system. But hey, we got more mod benches on the map now. I mean, we went from 6 to 7, but that's still more. I'm good at math. Let's go back to talking about bosses for a little bit, because just like last season, they dropped medallions. Medallions were significantly changed from last season in what I am willing to say is the worst part of Chapter 5. Medallions no longer give you shields. Instead, each coin on the map gives you a different ability. Just for an example, Ares Medallion makes you deal slightly more damage each shot, and Hades Medallion gives you Siphon. Oh, just like his boss fight, that's clever. On the surface level, this is a really cool idea. Taking the time to fight a boss is very risky, so having a powerful reward like this makes it more worth the risk. And having each coin give different powers rewards different playstyles. Where could this go wrong? I'll tell you where this goes wrong, when one medallion is incredibly more powerful than the others. The Cerberus Medallion is the true icon of Myths Immortals. This thing gives you unlimited dog sauce. Every few seconds while holding this medallion, you'll eventually get another dash. It doesn't sound that powerful on paper, but being able to use your dashes without needing to get more of them makes you the strongest player in the lobby. It's a really good item. It's too good of an item. If ring closes anywhere on the map other than the underworld, then the person with the Cerberus Medallion is the only person in the lobby that has access to dashes. Not to mention, if they're holding another medallion, they'll also have Siphon, or deal more damage, or have Zeus's effect that increases your mobility speed, or all 4 of these abilities at once. Getting all 5 coins last season took a good amount of luck, and even then, the shield regen wasn't too powerful. But the Cerberus coin clearly outshines every other medallion in rotation. It's so powerful that trying to land at Grim Gate later in the season became almost impossible. So many different players were trying to be like Peterbot and steamroll Grim Gates, which is fine and all, but like, could you go do this in ranked or something? I'm trying to get my quest done. Now, the Cerberus Medallion is very powerful. However, it does not make you impossible to kill, and it does require some skill to use. If you don't have this coin, it's not an immediate game over. It's more like you just have an uphill battle coming in at some point. The reason why I say medallions are now the worst part of Chapter 5 is because this continues to be a problem in later seasons. In theory, having different medallions give different abilities helps encourages different playstyles, but in practice, it just gives too much power to one player in the lobby. I digress. I don't want to talk about medallions anymore. Let's just talk about the items in rotation. First off, we have the Warforged Assault Rifle and... wait a second, this is just the Striker AR again. They're functionally identical to one another. The only difference is that this one has stripes. The same thing goes for the Harbinger SMG. It's just the Hyper SMG again. I don't really mind this, honestly. The Warforged and the Harbinger do look like they fit in with the season more than the other two. In terms of fully new weapons this season, we got the Huntress DMR, which is... It's not the worst gun in rotation, but... man, is that really all I have to say about it? It's fine, it's fine. The Reaper Sniper's still in rotation, so the DMR is not the most useful, but it's nice to have some more options for reliable long range. For now. We only got one more new gun this season, and that was the Gatekeeper Shotgun, and oh, praise be to Zeus, this gun is so good! This is an incredibly powerful shotgun that does insane damage, but here's the catch. It only has 3 shots. Missing even one shot with this thing could be the difference between life and death. And not only that, the Gatekeeper shotgun actually plays really well with the attachment system. You can use a drum mag to increase the amount of shots you have to 5, dramatically increasing your damage output, or if you're only going to shoot a few times and then switch to another weapon, the speed mag might be a better choice for you. The limited magazine size of the Gatekeeper shows how the attachment system could have been really fun to engage with, making you think about which attachments work best for your playstyle. It's a shame that beyond this one gun, no other weapon in rotation has the same level of complexity with attachments. Speaking of attachments, we did get one new one, which is the thermoscope. And that is also the last attachment Fortnite added this chapter. Yep, we are already done with attachments and it's not even April yet. Back to the Gatekeeper. While it is powerful, the Frenzy Auto is still in rotation, so your options for shotguns are high precision, high reward, or hold left click until you win. The only other weapon in rotation that I have anything to say about is the hand cannon. However, I'll save my thoughts on that until next season. You'll see what I mean when we get there. For now, let's talk about the items in rotation that aren't guns. It should come as no surprise that we got a few weapons based off of Greek mythology this season, and they were so much fun. We got 2 items relating to Zeus, the golden bananas and the lightning bolt. The lightning bolt is very similar to other big charge attacks, but this one shoots 3 projectiles instead of 1. You can be heavily punished if you use this at the wrong time, but what always worked for me was shockwaving into the air and then using the lightning bolts. This would catch people by surprise all the time. I know a lot of people like to trash talk the lightning bolts, but a little creativity goes a long way. The golden bananas are less interesting, but more useful. You can use them to get a short boost of speed and also heal you to full health. It's a pretty good item combining mobility and healing, so you can keep another inventory slot open for something else. Another Greek mythology item is the Wings of Icarus, and these are my least favorite mobility item they've ever added. Sure, the wings can take you large distances very quickly, and while you're holding them, they cancel all fall damage. What's the problem? Well, if another person sees you flying, it quickly turns into a game of duck hunt, and you're the duck. The wings give you an increased hitbox, meaning that you become a massive target when trying to use these things in tight situations. Yes, these things have their uses, but I value a mobility item that can get me out of a fight if I need to, and these things only make you easier to hit. Thankfully, I'm apparently the only person who thinks this way, because everyone else is constantly using the wings, giving me easy kills. I will never get tired of that clip. My favorite Greek item that they added this season has to be the Change of Hades. Oh, these things were good. Not only can you hit people with them, but you can also pull people with them to get them closer or catch them by surprise. You can even pull things like items or even your own teammates with these things. They're so much fun. I love stupid items like this. While they're not the most practical item, they cause the most amount of chaos, and sometimes a little bit of chaos is all you need to win a match. And that's pretty much all the items in rotation this season. It felt pretty balanced. There's no one item that really dominated the loot pool or anything like that. Well, except for the... I tried delaying this as long as I could. During the season, Fortnite collaborated with Avatar: The Last Airbender. This collab added these scrolls that let you use the element powers from the show. They were fun items. Some of them were more useful than others, but they were still fun nonetheless. While most of these were only available for 2 weeks, because Korra was in the Battle Pass, specifically waterbending got to stay in rotation for half the season. And this thing dominated the loot pool. It shot in quick bursts, doing incredible damage, had almost no bullet drop, making it the only useful long-range option this season, and had unlimited ammo. This thing was the only weapon you needed this season. Everything else was just there for variety. Waterbending is such a good item that it took a lot of fun out of the game. It's good to have powerful weapons in rotation, but having an item this good removes weapon variety because everyone's just going to be using the best items. I also wanted to mention that waterbending does heal you, but only when you're standing in water, which is the closest thing we're going to get to a Percy Jackson reference. That's another thing that bothers me about this collaboration. Why during the Greek mythology season do you collab with an IP that has nothing to do with Greek mythology? Sure, Avatar has mythology elements in it, but by that same logic, they could have collaborated with Dark Souls and would have made equal sense. Like, there's no shortage of IPs that use Greek mythology as a base. There's Percy Jackson, like I just mentioned, but there's also things like Persona 3 or Hades they could have collaborated with. What bothers me the most is, just like the Battle Pass, Fortnite did do an interesting collaboration that involved Greek mythology. mythology. Nike, the brand, gets its name from Nike, the Greek god. She's known for being the goddess of victory. It is normally depicted with wings. In fact, the iconic Nike swoosh is meant to be a simplified wing. And when Fortnite brought the goddess Nike to the game, they did a fantastic job with this, even adding an emote where you pose with the swooshes as wings. That's so good! But this is the only collaboration that happened this season that involved Greek mythology. Everything else was Avatar, Coachella, and Star Wars. Ah yes, my favorite part of Greek mythology is when Aphrodite rose from the foam and then lifted Luke's X-Wing out of the swamp. I understand that during a Fortnite season, not everything is going to fit into the seasonal theme, and we did get a plethora of other skins in the item shop that were based off of Greek mythology characters like Apollo. But I can't help but feel all the missed opportunities that this season had. It just bums me out. Anyways, we're talking about the story now, and Fortnite actually put in some effort to telling a story this time. Whether or not they did a good job, that's debatable. So apparently these medallions are powered by the energy of Pandora's box or whatever, something like that, and the gods are taking their anger out on the island. It's a little hard to follow the story this time around. I made a whole video about it, but basically it's hard to tell a story in Battle Royale when you're heavily incentivized to click through all the text. Thankfully, this season they added back in characters that actually talk to you. There was almost none of this for the past like 3 or so seasons, except for like a few audio logs left by Sloan. It's a welcome return because I'd rather learn the story in-game instead of on Twitter threads. The character that's talking to us this time is a sentient puddle of water. I want to go home. They basically tell us what we need to do to defeat Zeus, because of course he's the villain this season. Meanwhile, in the underworld, there's a suspicious cell open with a golden reboot card in it, which turns out to be revealing the return of Midas. And then he just leaves, and that was it. Fortnite spent so much time hyping up the return of Midas, even giving him his own game mode, before just sending him off to never show back up for the rest of the chapter. Like, what was even the point of any of that? Anyways, back to the stuff that matters. Hope is still on the island. Remember her? I didn't. She's here to help us fight Zeus using magical sand timers or whatever, and after defeating Zeus and talking to the water, it tells us that all we did was delay the inevitable, because destruction and doom are coming to the island. Doom! Doom, I tell you! And that's the story for the most part. It's not the most gripping story, but it's at least something. Last season didn't give us anything to chew on other than obscure hints. This season at least gave us something to follow. There's so many different ways that you can interpret what the puddle said. There's a good amount of mystery for what's going on. Like, we don't know what's gonna happen. If the whole season timeline didn't get leaked, yeah, I kind of have to talk about this. This image randomly appeared on 4chan one day, showing us a roadmap of the rest of the chapter. It looked too good to be fake, but also this came from 4chan, so we need proof before we believe any of this. And that proof came from Billie Eilish. The leak came out during the Lady Gaga festival season, and the leak said that the next artist for festival was going to be Billie Eilish. And sure enough, the next season of festival comes around and it's featuring Billie Eilish. Uh-oh. The leak also showed that Season 3 was going to be Wastelander themed, and after another mini-event that I missed out on again because I happened to be at work at the same time, a dust storm started rolling towards the island. Uh-oh. And on the leaked roadmap, it also showed that Metallica is going to have a big role next season, and during the mini-event, a riff from Metallica played. Oh no, the leak is very real. Now, I still stand by medallions being one of the worst parts of Chapter 5, but this leak has to be the second worst thing. Basically, every massive twist that Fortnite had in store for us is now just public knowledge. We're gonna have another Marvel season, we're gonna go back to the Chapter 2 map, and rocket racing is still on the roadmap for some reason. While in the moment, this leak did get people hyped for the future, it also just ruined every surprise. Now, not everything was on the roadmap, just seasonal themes and events. But now that we have a general timeline, there feels like there's no more mystery. There's no more wondering what's going to happen next, because we know what's going to happen next. A massive threat is coming to the island in the form of the Wasteland, and it's going to take everything we got to defeat it. Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire! Oh, come on! Feel the heartbeat, the heart of the wasteland. I'm running on fire and steel. Fortnite Wrecked, Chapter 5, Season 3. Oh my god, this season was so much fun. The loot pool was filled to the brim with chaotic, goofy items, and I am a big fan of goofy items. Nitro Splashes, probably one of my favorite mobility items Fortnite has ever had. It increases your running speed, gives you infinite sprint, and lets you burst through structures. Not to mention the fact that with the infinite sprint, you can just continuously bunny hop. There are other mobility options, but this one's the most satisfying, bursting through walls at top speeds, running around like a blue hedgehog, and it also lets you just run on water. It's such a fun item. They also added in one of my favorite shotguns, the combat shotgun. It's fast firing and can deal good damage from a distance. The Gatekeeper is still here, so it's probably the better option, but the combat shotgun is good at medium range and has a mag size bigger than 3. There's also the combat assault rifle. It's good, but not an amazing weapon. But it's also the only assault rifle in rotation this season. I mean, there's the Enforcer. Yeah, the combat AR is the only option this season. Anyways, they actually added in a new shotgun this season. It's called the Towhook Launcher. Yeah, I know you're meant to use this thing to attach to cars, but I barely ever used it for that. To me, this thing was a shotgun. And whenever I would hit someone with this thing, it would also cause knockback, throwing the other player off because 1, I just pushed them back, and 2, they're confused why someone's using the worthless towhook as a shotgun. Let's talk about the actual new close-range weapon this season, the Nitro Fists. These things had an insane 3-hit combo that did incredible damage. These things dominated the loot pool because all you had to do was get close and then just spam left-click. So it was basically the Frenzy Auto Shotgun, but more annoying. These things also had a dash attack that was fairly inconsistent to do because you had to be in the air to use it. The amount of times I would try to dash out of a situation only to just punch the air was too many. The fists were a fun item because they were very deadly but only at close range, so all you had to do was put a little bit of distance between yourself and the other person and you would be safe. And would you look at that, the combat shotgun's good for a fight like this and stops players from getting close. It's almost like they planned that or something. They also added in a new sniper, which is basically just the heavy sniper with the cool reload animation. Like I said, any season with a sniper is good, but what's interesting about this sniper is that you can't put attachments on it. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said Fortnite was done with the attachment system. Now they just make it compatible with the starting loot pool, but other than that, from here on out, several weapons in rotation just can't be modded. But despite that, this gun's still fun to use. I am really enjoying what this season has to offer. There are so many high-powered items in rotation that I started using this loadout that I called the high-impact loadout that was basically just the toe-hook, nitro fist, and the hand cannon. I told you I'd talk about it. It's a loadout that can do incredible damage, but only if I hit my shots, which I often don't do. A fight with this loadout basically goes one of two ways. Either you're gonna annihilate me, or I'm gonna click my mouse twice and you're gonna be gone. This is the most I've enjoyed the item rotation this chapter. It's so good. Man, I wonder what the rest of the community thinks about this season. I'm sure they're loving it just as much as I do.
Yeah, I will not be playing this season.
It's my season, bro. I'm the king of cars.
Oh, yeah! Sick, dude!
In case you're wondering, that will be the worst season of all time.
Oh. It would seem I'm in the minority here. Wrecked very quickly became one of the most hated Fortnite season, most of the hate coming from the new car buffs. Cars were so incredibly strong at the start of the season, having their health increased to 2,000 and now also having the ability to shoot. Cars were so powerful that they just started carrying players through matches without much effort, and while some players loved this, there was a large number of vocal critics that hated this, which included me. I know people make the argument that week 1 cars were a casual's best friend, but I hated the fact that cars were so strong. My main complaint came from the fact that players without a car couldn't do anything against a player that was with a car. If your car blows up, or if you just can't find one, you don't stand a fighting chance. I was really starting to hate this season. That was until later updates. They changed it so cars' health was different from solos and squads, and also, they started slowly adding in items to help even the playing field. The boom bolt is all we had to deal with cars at the start of the season, and it didn't really do a good job at that. But then we started getting things like the laser rifle, EMPs, and boogie bombs for some reason. We started getting items that helped counter cars, evening the playing field, and that is when I started falling in love with this season. And don't get the wrong idea, cars were still an incredibly useful tool the whole season, but now, players on foot stood a chance. Look, there's nothing I can do that can change the fact that people hate the season that I love, which is unfortunate. But like I said at the start, if you disagree with me and you think that this season has horrendous design decisions, I agree with you, because what the hell are these medallions? The medallions this season were so busted. Donnie's coin gave you infinite nitro. Infinite nitro! And yes, that also gives you unlimited sprint, meaning that you could just bunny hop forever. The Bushida's coin gives you infinite shields up to 75. It's just like the medallions from Season 1, so how could this one be broken? Because it's the only one in the game that does this now. There were 5 medallions in Season 1 that did this, and in Season 3, there's only the one, and when you combine it with other passive healing items and rotation, you get a recipe for I don't want to play this game anymore. The worst offender has to be Scar's medallion, which gives you unlimited ammo, and she drops a mythic boom bolt. This gun takes rocket ammo, and you can only carry about 15 or so at a time. But now with this medallion, you can just shoot this thing till the cows come home. It's insane! These are the most broken and overpowered medallions in all of Chapter 5, by a long shot. And because all of them are located at the bottom half of the map, it's not hard for one person to go through, pick up all three, and then dominate the lobby. Like I said about every medallion, these things don't make you invincible, but they do give you a heavy advantage. I guess having overpowered medallions kinda goes with the season theme being all chaotic and stuff, but not in a good way. I don't want to talk about medallions anymore. These things have quickly gone to being a neat feature to an overpowered and annoying item. God, I never want to see these things again. Let's move on to talking about something else. Map changes this season were entirely in the bottom half of the map. And yes, just like last season, the old areas of the map feel hollow and empty just like my soul. This season they technically added 2 new biomes. One is the Red Desert area, and the other one is the area I call the dehydrated part of the map, which is just areas that were already on the map but got covered in dust. The Red Desert area has some neat locations. Redline Rig is a massive engine, and Brutal Beachhead is a beached boat that looks like a shark. Cool. Snooty Steps actually got a pretty interesting change, having this layer of sand create a slope. Before, this place was a vertical nightmare, but now the slope makes it easier to get around while keeping that verticality. Looking back at it now, I should have landed here more. It's a cool place. But my favorite place to land during this season was the Nitro Dome. For one, I like the design of this area, having all the loot be on the outside edge while having this big monster truck ring in the middle for fighting. This place also has constant music playing, which helps add to the enjoyment. I don't really care about winning or losing. If Bad Reputation is playing, I'm having fun. There's also a boss fight here, but it only spawns when driving around the monster truck area or getting kills. It's such a fun and chaotic boss fight too, and the other 2 boss fights aren't. The fights with Donny Boy and the Machinists are just normal fights with nothing really special happening. Honestly, the way that the Wastelanders were used is also the reason why I feel like this season's Battle Pass just felt more lackluster than the other ones. There's only 3 boss fights on the map, which compared to the 5 at the start of the chapter, I feel like it caused a little less interest into the Battle Pass skins. Now, other skins like Bright Raider and Rust are on the map, but just as random NPCs that just sell random items, and that's it. Not to mention, the only other character in the past that's not Donnie or Scar that got any amount of character development was Peabody. Gross. Don't get me wrong, this is still a good pass with some good skins, but the characters just didn't really get a chance to shine. Which is weird, because there's actual substance to the story this time. So Donny Boy's trying to take over the island because reasons, and Hope and Jonesy are gonna try to stop him. And yes, Hope and Jonesy are still here, and they actually talk for once.
Jones, you're late.
He's late? You're the one that hasn't said a word for the past 6 months, where have you been? This is a welcome addition, and I do like them developing Hope as a character, but it's just weird that they're doing this so long after she was introduced. Anyways, we're tasked with collecting these gemstones to help stop Donny Boy's pipeline from being completed. The gems don't do this, and instead summon the talking water from last season. The pipeline is completed, but right before Donny Boy is able to use it, it gets sabotaged in another mini live event that I actually got to see for once. It was cool to see, but it was also very underwhelming.
Oh, a nuke did go off. Oh, I was joking.
The boss medallion's there.
Pick up the medallion.
With all the hype and build-up and a gigantic mushroom cloud, I think it would have done more damage than just dig a small hole in the ground. But whatever, I'm not a scientist. I'm oversimplifying the story, like I've been doing, but legitimately this was a neat little storyline. I like how characters from Season 1 are interacting with characters from Season 2, and dealing with problems in Season 3, and starting to prepare for problems that will come up in Season 4. It makes the chapters feel more cohesive. I do wish the characters from this season got more of a chance to shine, but that's just a me thing. I'll finish talking about the story in a little bit, but first let's talk about seasonal collabs. It'll be quick, there's not much to talk about. Let's tackle these in reverse order. The Fall Guys collaboration was bizarre. They just put a full Fall Guys level on the island, and how fast you got through it determined the items you got. It wasn't really anything exciting, but it was also just an advertisement that you can just play Fall Guys in Fortnite now, so whatever. The Pirates of the Caribbean was this season's event pass, which brought a lot of pirate items into the loot pool. It wasn't a bad collab, but it also wasn't really anything to write home about. The only thing I can really remember from this time is getting a double kill with the ship in the bottle. I don't really know how this happened, but the kill feed says I got got 2 kills, so I'll take it. Out of all the collaborations this season, this one got the least amount of attention, which is weird because it was still fairly enjoyable. Marvel had a little bit to do with this season, bringing in Magneto. You can use his powers to launch these giant metal balls at people or push cars out of bounds. This item was a little too strong in my opinion, but it also didn't take away as much fun as waterbending did, so whatever. And then there was the Fallout collab, with power armor in the battle pass and a few items added to rotation. As I mentioned a while ago, we got the laser rifle as a weapon that was only really good for damaging cars, and we got Nuka-Cola as a healing item. I love the little detail of getting 1 gold every time you use these, that's great. That being said, most of the collabs this season didn't really have much substance to them. Just 1 or 2 items added to rotation with 1 or 2 skins added to the shop. That is with the exception with the best collaboration that happened this season, Metallica. Oh, this one was good. Metallica music took over the Nitro Dome, Loot Island was changed to be Metallica themed, and we got an insane mythic mobility item that lets you just ride lightning around the map. It was so good. I know people weren't the biggest fan of this collab, especially the concert that happened, but I enjoyed the hell out of it, so that sounds like a you problem. Collaborations this season were not massive, and I'm kind of okay with that. No full season takeovers, no large-scale changes. It's not as exciting this way, but it also lets us focus on the Fortnite part of Fortnite. And then there was arguably the biggest thing to happen this season, Fortnite Reload. It's basically a fast version of Fortnite where you can make more mistakes. As long as one member of your team is still alive, you can respawn back in. The map is smaller, you can only have about 50 players, and the rotation of items is a bunch of classic weapons. Also, Reload still has hit scan weapons and not bullet drop. And now that I can swap between bullet drop and hit scan gameplay, I can say with 100% certainty that there was almost no difference between the two. I can switch between Reload and normal BR back and forth constantly, and I feel 0 difference between the two. The only difference, and I mean only difference, is that I can doink people across the map at Reload a lot easier than I can in Battle Royale. And that's it. Other than that, bullet drop and hit scan are functionally the same. I do not understand the discourse. Like, why do people hate bullet drop so much? God, if I hear one more person say that bullet drop is killing Fortnite, I'm throwing you in the rock tumbler and you're not coming out until you're smooth. Yeah, Fortnite Reload's cool. Thumbs up for me. Now, back to the story to finish this chapter. The pipeline was sabotaged by this guy called the Wanderer, who's like this Herobrine-esque character that you could see from a distance. There's a lot of mystery and intrigue into who this could possibly be. Could it be Jetto? Could it be someone else? It's not like his face was on the leaked roadmap or anything like that. Yeah, it was Dr. Doom. He used the pipeline to reveal Pandora's box and use its power for himself, to take over the island. For some reason. Why do people want to take over the island so bad? What's on it that's so special? It can't be Pandora's box. Doom literally just opened it and took power from it. Well, there's actually an answer to that question. Not the best answer, but an answer nonetheless. And we find it in the most story-rich season Fortnite has had in a while. Season 4. Absolute Doom, a full Fortnite season with Dr. Doom as the main villain, and the first villain of this season to have a motive beyond just taking over the island. He doesn't just want to take over the island, he wants to shape the island into his perfect vision of the world. He also has the secondary goal of bringing his mother back to life, but I'm sure that's never going to come up again. It will. Doom is a really thought-out antagonist and actually fits well with the story, but I do have some issues with him. What bothers me the most is that Doom is the only good antagonist of Chapter 5, because he was the only one that actually had any effort put into him. So much time and effort went into making Doom an absolute powerhouse. Doom's castle is filled with trophies of other characters he's killed, like Magneto and Silver Surfer, to characters that have never even shown up in Fortnite before, like Ultron or the entire Fantastic Four, going as far as to put a landmark on the map of a destroyed Fantastic Four base just to show how powerful he is. There's also all the propaganda around the map dedicated to Doom, from posters to news broadcasts to ice cream shops. I don't remember those from the movies. They gave so much attention to detail to Doom that I just can't help but feel bad for the other Chapter 5 antagonists. Donny Boy only got a few obscure radio broadcasts, Zeus only made a statue move, and Valeria didn't really do anything. All of these characters had so much potential, but they just never had the time to shine. If you look deeper into these characters, you find so many interesting things about them that Fortnite just never expanded upon. And it bothers me that these Fortnite original characters don't get their time to shine, but this collab character does. They put so much effort into a character from another series, to a character that Fortnite doesn't even own. I think part of the reason why so many people are getting upset with Fortnite's story is because they're just barely putting any attention on their own characters. However, this season does have an exception. Hope got so much character development this season, from becoming a leader and overcoming self-doubt to helping others that can't help themselves.
This is wrong. Who knows how long these innocent people had to live under Mysterio's thrall, robbed of their feelings, their free will, their personhood. Mysterio will pay for this.
Over the course of this chapter, Hope went from being a random mysterious goth chick to one of Fortnite's main characters. Wow, it's almost like when Fortnite actually takes the time to develop their characters, they do a pretty good job at it. Who would have fucking guessed? While it is nice to finally see characters do things and express emotions, I can't help but feel a little disappointed that we didn't get any of this type of storytelling until the end of the chapter. But hey, this wouldn't be the first time Fortnite took 9 months to develop a character. Eve. And while I did say that Doom has a lot of effort put into his character, there are still several unanswered questions. Why the dig sites? Why are these here? We never got an answer to what Doom was looking for. I also have some gripes with Mephisto, but you're not supposed to know about him yet. Ignore the fact that I mentioned him. Let's talk about the map changes. No massive biomes were added, so this should be quick to go through. I already talked about how much I like Doom's castle. Big POI, bunch of environmental storytelling, a boss fight, fun place to land for nerds. They made classic courtyards worse. Instead of tennis courts, they just put these ugly Doom statues. Doom State is an okay POI. It has some nice looking buildings, then it's one of the only livable locations left on the map. Like, look at this place. It's changed so much over the course of a year. The map was filled with cities and towns, and now there's only 2 livable locations on the map, and one of them is ruled by a dictator. Why is it so hard for people to take over this island? Everybody that's lived here is probably either dead or thrown into prison, which is the last location on the map, the Raft. This place almost feels like a mini Tilted Towers. There's a nice mixture of closed quarters and big open areas with these watchtowers all over the place. This is probably the most action-packed location on the map. I do really like how all the changes this season were on the inside of the map. Every season had massive changes on the far outer edge of the map, so making changes to more inland areas helps make the map feel more alive. There's nothing special about the bosses on the map this time around, they're mostly just bullet sponges. Doom does the funny foot dive from Marvel vs. Capcom, but other than that, there's not much to say. And then there's this season's medallions, and after 2 seasons of medallions being a force to be reckoned with, I love the fact that the medallions are kinda worthless this time around. Okay, so Doom's medallion gives Siphon. Not bad, but nothing to write home about. Mysterio's medallion gives invisibility, and I already talked about this like an hour ago, but Fortnite never gets stealth items right. And finally, there's Emma Frost's medallion, which can scan people every few seconds, which is useful, but instead of trying to fight the boss, you can also just hire Artemis, and she does the exact same thing. Artemis continues to prove that she's best girl. You do have to lug around an NPC, but it's easier than trying to get the most wanted item in a location that's basically a small Tilted Towers. These are the worst coins in Chapter 5 history, and I am all here for it. I hope this is the last time we ever see these things again. Get these things out of here. Now, let's go over the weapons in Absolute Doom, or as it should be called, Absolute War Machine, because those items were insane. A Marvel season requires Marvel items, and the ones that they added are a choice. I'm gonna try to speed through this part because talking about the items in rotation always takes the longest, and Jesus Christ, we're more than an hour into this video. I want to go to bed. We need to talk about the War Machine items first, because one in particular dominated the loot pool. This item became infamous with this season because of how overpowered it was. The auto turret. It did 15 damage every second, and it could shoot at the same time with you, and I'm just kidding. The jetpack. A lot of my problems with this season can be summarized with the jetpack. This is the ultimate mobility item. It's the first mobility item Fortnite has ever added that is better than shockwaves and can keep up with high-speed cars. It's a good item. It's a really good item. It's too good of an item. Oh my god, relax, dude. My problem with the jetpack is the same problem I had with week 1 cars. If you don't have one, you're screwed. That's how most of the items in the loot pool felt. War Machine's arsenal can fire infinite rockets, Captain Fortnite's shield is almost required for solos, and then when Tony Stark showed his stupid face, the Iron Man gloves also added to this problem. There is almost no reason to talk about any of the other items in rotation because the Marvel items were just so good. And yeah, it's a Marvel season, obviously Marvel items are going to be used, but they're not just good items, they're mandatory items. Remember waterbending from Season 2 and how annoying it was to be constantly dealing with it? This season's whole item rotation feels like that. You either use a jetpack or you get wrecked by someone else using it. I feel like I've made myself clear that I enjoy silly items like this, but I don't enjoy mandatory silly items. I like using the hand cannon, but if it's the only gun worth using, it takes away a lot of the fun. Or at least that's how this loot pool felt to me. Either use the optimal loadout or die trying to have fun. Now, a lot of these problems did go away with later patches that nerfed these items into the ground, but at that point, why even keep them in rotation? I just didn't like this weapon rotation. Then again, this is also the season where I played the most ranked, so that could also be part of my problem. I don't know. On the bright side, there were some positives. The dual SMGs were a blast to use, the new shotgun would have been useful if the Gatekeeper wasn't still in rotation, and the Monarch pistol kind of doubled as a DMR. These were really fun items to use when I wasn't getting annihilated by superhero items. It's just combining a loophole that I don't like and a season theme I'm not that interested in, and the outcome is just going to be a season I'm not a big fan of. Oh, I probably should have mentioned this sooner, but I'm just not a big Marvel fan. I don't hate Marvel, but I'm also not that interested in it either. With that, it's a hard sell to get me interested in a Marvel character-themed battle pass. Not to mention, it's not just a Marvel-themed pass, it's a Marvel-themed pass with several characters I've never heard of before. Like, with no research, the characters in this pass I already knew about were War Machine and Doom, and if it wasn't for No Way Home, I would have no idea who Mysterio is either. Even then, all of these are characters I only really have a passing interest in. If it wasn't for this one video by Comic Drake that got me interested in the character of Gwenpool, there's almost nothing in this pass that stood out to me. Honestly, besides Gwenpool, my favorite skins from the past were the crossover skins. I loved these. Skins like this make it feel like a true collaboration. Most Fortnite collabs are just, hey, we added this guy to the shop, give us money. But combining a Fortnite character with another pre-existing character is always fun to see. That being said, the two crossover skins of the past I'm not super interested in, but they are the two skins of the past that I like the most. Besides Gwenpool, obviously. I hate being a stick in the mud at the end of the season, so let's finish up talk about this season with something I actually enjoyed more than I thought I would. The Doom event. This was actually really enjoyable. Having a lobby full of strangers work together to fight this giant boss was actually kind of exciting. The fight did drag a little bit, and there were players trying to grief, but even if you died, you could just load into another match and keep fighting. I still think live events are overrated, but I'll admit, I enjoyed this one more than I thought. And now with Doom gone, there is no more threat to the island. There is nothing left to do other than ride out for the rest of the season. It is weird to me that we defeated Doom and there's still like a month left in the season. Like, what are we gonna do now? I mean, it's not like Fortnite has been hinting at a secret other villain that's gonna take Doom's place and I totally didn't mention him earlier. Are you tired of my stupid foreshadowing jokes yet? Fortnitemares was back with a vengeance this year, with the biggest holiday event in Fortnite history. Winterfest this chapter was very underwhelming, and the summer event was so boring I didn't even mention it. The Halloween event was filled to the brim with content. You put the devil in charge of Halloween, he's gonna do a good job. So many crossovers, Nightmare Before Christmas, Billy the Puppet, Leatherface, Edward Scissorhands, so many Halloween collabs. The entire island was covered in pumpkins and Halloween decorations. We even got a whole new POI just for Halloween. And not only are the Halloween items back, but we also got a new one in the form of a chainsaw. A high-powered melee item that could also be used for mobility. I love how you could just cycle between sprinting and chainsawing around like you're the guy from Soul Eater. I haven't seen Chainsaw Man. Speaking of mobility, they removed the jetpack after a few days, but hey, that still counts. Yes, this is still a Marvel season, and Marvel items are still gonna be in rotation, but just losing the jetpack alone made me more excited. This Halloween event took a Fortnite season I wasn't enjoying and then flipped it onto its head. It's almost like we got a mini Halloween-themed season, but all good things come to an end, and it's time for us to head into an actual mini Fortnite season. During an in-game livestream, I refuse to call this an event, it was a live stream that you could watch in-game. During this live stream, they showed the next Fortnite trailer. Early, on accident, in front of 10 million players. Epic, are you doing okay? In that trailer, they showed that we will be returning to the Chapter 2 island in the last season of Chapter 5. What about Mephisto? Like, did we not do anything about that guy? He showed up and turned Chapter 5 into this nightmarish hellscape, and are we just not gonna do anything about it? Like, I don't know the comic lore, but considering that this is the devil and Doom made a giant tower to summon Mephisto, I don't think he should be left alone unchecked. I don't know, maybe he's chill like that. Add Mephisto to my list of unanswered questions, I guess. Whatever. Anyways, after 4 seasons of this chapter, we are left with one more revisit to an island. The one we've been waiting for. The one everyone's excited about. The one that beats without a true others.
Let's get together, see what we can uncover. One that defies your world, gives you truth and life.
Chapter 2 Remix, the last season of Chapter 5. I know some people count the OG seasons as their own thing and not part of Chapter 5, but that's like saying the intermissions in Homestuck are their own thing and not important to the story. They are, don't skip those. Chapter 2 Remix brings back the Chapter 2 experience to the best of its abilities. We have the Chapter 2 map, we have Chapter 2 guns, we even have the Chapter 2 vehicles. I don't remember them doing that though. I'm not gonna go over all the items in rotation because there's really not that much to say. All the weapons are fairly basic. Basic assault rifles, basic shotguns, no medallions on the map, thank God. It's just a straightforward item rotation, and you know what? After a year of waterbending, jetpacks, and car shenanigans, it feels really nice to go back to a simple loot pool like this. And also, bullet drop is fully gone, and we're back to hit scan and bloom. If you want to say that this is fixed Fortnite and bullet drop is what was making the other seasons bad, fine, go ahead. We still have room with a rock tumbler for you. There are exceptions to this basic loot pool, but I'll talk about the mythics in a little bit. First, I want to talk about the map and how awful it is for zero build. This map is a zero build player's worst nightmare. Big open fields as far as the eye can see with no cover whatsoever. Obviously, this map was not made with zero build in mind, but OG Fortnite didn't have the same problem because they kept bunkers in rotation. Even though it's not an OG item, it was still left in zero build, making those open areas more tolerable. So tell me why, for the first time the whole chapter, they decide to take bunkers out of rotation now. Are you serious? No bunkers whatsoever. No, instead they give us portaforts, a super rare and non-versatile item. Also, did you see that vending machines were still in Chapter 2 Remix and they brought back upgrade benches? I didn't for a week because they're only in build mode. So much more was added to build mode instead of zero build. Build mode players were eating good the whole season, while zero build players just got a piece of paper that just says you're only here out of obligation. Fuck you. They also added in common snipers. Common snipers. So getting shot in the head for almost all of your health was a common occurrence. Isn't this fun? Are you guys having fun? As you can probably tell, I'm not a big fan of this season. The map was just too big. There are plenty of ways to get around this though, with rifts on the ground and choppers bringing you up to the moon. But these big open spaces just leave zero build players vulnerable with nothing to do. Now, I want to make myself perfectly clear. I'm just not a fan of old Fortnite. I have zero nostalgia for this map or any of these weapons. However, there's a lot of people that do, and I'm sure those people are having the time of their lives with this season. But to people like me, to newer Fortnite fans, this season just wasn't as enjoyable. But I also recognize that this season isn't for new Fortnite fans. It's for the people that love Chapter 2. And while I do complain about common snipers, there are snipers in rotation, so I'm obligated to say that this season has a good weapon rotation. Hello, Editing Cuzzle here. Listening back to what I said, while I'm still not a big fan of the season, I am being a little too negative about it. Like I said, having a standard, somewhat non-chaotic loot pool is a nice change of pace, and the named locations of the map are more varied and distinct from one another. I didn't realize how negative I was being in the script. It sounds like I hated the season, which isn't the case. I'm not a big fan of it, but at the end of the day, it's still enjoyable to play. I have my gripes, I have my issues with it, and if it sounds like my statements are contradictory and mixed, that's honestly just how I felt about the season. My thoughts are mixed. Remixed up! Anyways, back to everything else I wrote down. So while I will openly say my distaste for this season, do take my thoughts with a grain of salt. I mean, I referenced Homestuck earlier. You should be ignoring everything I have to say, and I don't know how to transition to the next topic. The Battle Pass this season was deceptively good. Like, the base styles of the skins look fine, but the alt styles look so good. Undercover Sky looks so precious whenever you take off her mask, and Chaos Director looks fine, but Shadowstruck Chaos Director, on the other hand,
This better not awaken anything in me.
And that's it. Those are all the good skins in the Battle Pass. There was absolutely nothing else on the pass that was interesting. And there was especially not a skin that caters to my specific hyperfixation over Fortnite cats. I'm just kidding. Look at my boy! I'm not gonna gush too much about Meowtis, but I do really like the skin. He's perfect. The biggest issue I have with this Battle Pass is that it's still 950 V-Bucks despite it has half the amount of skins. That being said, it is 5 skins for like $8, so it's not a horrible deal if there's stuff in here that you want. It's just not as good of a deal as it normally is. Speaking of skins, they made a good change to the locker for the first time this chapter. Now you can save a full loadout at once, equipping skins, emotes, wraps, all at the same time. I wanna be happy about this, but we already had this. This is how the locker already worked, and now you've just overcomplicated it. Like, I'm happy it's back, but I'm still mad that you got rid of it in the first place. Anyways, here's the story of Chapter 2 Remix. There is none. We got a few audio logs of Hope saying goodbye to Valeria. Those were nice. But other than that, nothing. No explanation for how we got to the Chapter 2 map. No explanation for why hip-hop artists are taking over POIs. Nothing. I want to be upset, but that would also mean that Snoop Dogg would have to become relevant to the Fortnite storyline, and I just don't want to deal with that. I can understand why they've been very hand-wavy with the story this time around. Fingers crossed next chapter gives us something that we can chew on. Oh, by the way, Snoop Dogg is on the map. This season was called Chapter 2 Remix because along with the Chapter 2 island, they're remixing several locations on the map to be collabs with big-named rappers. With how much I've been complaining about collab items, you would think that I would hate this, but honestly, this is some of my favorite content from this season. Fortnite collabs are at their best when they go all in, and they went all in on this one. Every new POI is filled to the brim with details and references to each artist. It is a little upsetting that we don't get the original POIs, but I also have no nostalgia for those locations, so this is my first time seeing these locations anyway. At these locations is a boss fight with each artist, and after the fight, they drop their mythic weapon, a key card, and become a following NPC. If you manage to clear out one of these areas, you're basically stacked for the rest of the game. The vaults give you so much stuff, and the mythic weapons are incredibly powerful. My favorite mythic has to be the Rap God minigun. It's just so stupid. I do love how each mythic plays a little bit of each artist's song whenever you pick them up. I also like how the boss music is just straight up a song from each of the artists. The beat to Rap God is playing the whole time you're in the grotto, but you only hear the lyrics when you're fighting Eminem. It's a fun little detail. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this collab, even though I'm not familiar with most of the artists. Out of all of the artists they've collabed with this season, Eminem is like the only one I'm that familiar with. He's one of 2 artists in this collab I've actually listened to before. The other one being, no fucking shot. They added Juice WRLD to Fortnite. I've been seeing people ask for Juice WRLD for years, and I never thought it would actually happen. Doing something like this could very easily be seen in poor taste. Back when Guitar Hero 5 added Kurt Cobain as a playable character, people didn't respond to it positively. Courtney Love even threatened legal action for how they used Kirk's likeness. So something like this could very easily be seen as malicious or using a deceased person's likeness for money. However, with Juice WRLD and Fortnite, this is clearly not the case. With how much love and detail was put into this collab, people like Juice WRLD's manager giving the green light, and with how many fans have been asking for this, it's obvious that Fortnite did this in the most respectful way possible. And with that, Chapter 5 is over. I'm not gonna lie, it definitely had its issues, and I assume most people are still gonna say this is the worst Fortnite chapter by far. But honestly, looking back at the chapter as a whole, it was actually more enjoyable than I remembered it. It really does feel like the start of Wrecked just burned the fan base beyond repair for some reason. But if you're able to look past all the issues with this chapter, there's some really good and unique content in there. You know, if you just ignore all the bad parts, it doesn't seem as bad. While making this video, I kept finding so many different things from Chapter 5 that I enjoyed. Most of the items they added were fun, several of the skins they added look incredible, and we got a new character to Fortnite's main cast. Chapter 3 and 4 didn't even do that. There is so much to love about this chapter that's just buried under all the talk about cars and advertisements. Even with the overpowered collab items, even with the oversaturation of anger towards Wrecked, even with all of that, Fortnite Chapter 5 was a really interesting experience, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it. In conclusion, Fortnite, that's it. That's the conclusion to the video. Just Fortnite. You've heard me talk long enough. Oh my god, go away!
Snap! That one's going in my cringe compilation.